I stand at the mahogany boardroom table watching CEO Marcus Wellington's face drain of color as my words echo through the silence. Just moments before he'd barked, "Bring the coffee, dispatcher," like I was his personal servant. I placed the cup down gently, then walked to the podium instead of returning to my corner. "Sit down," he yelled, his voice cracking with rage. But I tapped the microphone and every board member leaned forward as I spoke clearly into the sudden quiet. "I'd like to call a board meeting to remove the CEO who thinks the majority shareholder is his coffee girl. The same woman he's humiliated for 3 months, calling me worthless, expendable, just another face in his corporate machine. The same woman who owns 51% of his company and has been documenting every crime he's committed. 3 months earlier, I never imagined I'd be standing in that boardroom. I was June Patterson, 28 years old, starting my first day at Meridian Logistics as what I thought would be a temporary dispatcher position. The morning sun streamed through the industrial windows as I pulled into the employee parking lot, my Honda Civic looking modest next to the luxury vehicles in the executive spaces. What nobody knew, not even me, until 2 weeks before was that I owned this entire company. My grandmother Patricia had passed away peacefully in her sleep, leaving me devastated, but also confused by her final words. "Check the safety deposit box, sweetheart. Box 779 at First National. The key is in my jewelry chest wrapped in your grandfather's Purple Heart ribbon." She'd squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll be smarter than I was. Don't let them see you coming." At the bank, my hands shook as I opened the metal box. Inside lay documents that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Patricia Patterson, my sweet grandmother who baked cookies and knitted scarves, had been the majority shareholder of Meridian Logistics through a shell company called Riverside Holdings, LLC. 51% ownership acquired in 1987 when the company was struggling, and my grandfather's military connections helped secure their first government contracts. The inheritance attorney Benjamin Crawford explained everything in his downtown office. "Your grandmother was brilliant, June. She never interfered with day-to-day operations, but she watched. She collected every annual report, every financial statement. When the current management took over 5 years ago, she became concerned about the direction of the company." "Why didn't she ever tell me?" I asked, staring at the stock certificates. "She wanted you to earn your place in the world first, but she also suspected something wasn't right with the current leadership. She specifically requested that if anything happened to her, you should investigate the company thoroughly before revealing your ownership." That's how I found myself applying for the dispatcher position under my maiden name, June Riley, hoping to understand the business from the ground up before taking control. Marcus Wellington greeted my first day with immediate disdain. He was 45, silver-haired, with the kind of aggressive confidence that came from years of intimidating subordinates. "Another temp dispatcher," he announced to his assistant. "Put her in the back corner. These people never last more than a few weeks anyway." The dispatcher office occupied a cramped space behind the main customer service area. My supervisor, Sandra Mitchell, was a tired-looking woman in her 40s who'd clearly learned to keep her head down. "Don't take anything Marcus says personally," she whispered as she showed me the computer systems. "He's been getting worse lately. Pressure from above, I think." "What kind of pressure?" I asked innocently. Sandra glanced around nervously. "Financial stuff. Board meetings behind closed doors. He's been asking me to adjust certain numbers in the quarterly reports." My first red flag went up immediately. The company handled logistics for manufacturing and government contracts coordinating shipments across the Midwest. It should have been profitable with our client base, but something felt wrong. Employees walked on eggshells around Marcus and his inner circle. The warehouse workers looked exhausted and underpaid. Equipment needed repairs that never seemed to get approved. During my lunch break, I called Benjamin Crawford from my car. "I need you to set up a meeting. I want to understand exactly what legal authority I have as majority shareholder. June, be very careful. If there's misconduct happening, revealing yourself too early could give them time to cover tracks or destroy evidence. That afternoon, I witnessed Marcus's management style firsthand. He stormed into the customer service area screaming at a young employee named Ashley about a delayed shipment. "You're all incompetent. This is exactly why this company is failing. Maybe I should start firing people to send a message." Ashley burst into tears, but Marcus wasn't finished. He turned to the entire room and declared, "Anyone who can't handle the pressure can find the door right now. I don't pay you people to make excuses." I watched from my corner, taking mental notes about everything I saw. After work, I drove to a coffee shop across town and opened my laptop. Using the owner access codes that Benjamin had provided, I logged into Meridian's internal systems remotely. What I found made my stomach turn. The financial records showed systematic manipulation. Revenue numbers were inflated while expenses were hidden in subsidiary accounts. The company was bleeding money, but Marcus was reporting profits to the board and shareholders. Worse, I found transfers to personal accounts that had no business justification. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number containing only a building address and midnight, "Come alone." My blood ran cold until I realized it was from the security company that monitored our facilities. Someone had triggered an after-hours alarm. I drove to the warehouse district, my heart pounding as I saw a black sedan parked behind our main building. Through the office windows, I could see figures moving around with flashlights. I called the police from the parking lot, but by the time they arrived, whoever had been inside was gone. The next morning, Sandra pulled me aside with panic in her eyes. "Someone accessed the financial servers last night. Marcus is furious. He's interrogating everyone who has system access." But I'd already seen the security footage that Marcus didn't know existed. The intruders weren't thieves. They were wearing business suits and systematically photographing documents. One of them was Derek Morrison, Marcus's vice president of operations. They weren't stealing information. They were destroying it. Over the next 6 weeks, I became a ghost within my own company, invisible to management, but trusted by the workers who actually kept Meridian running. Every morning I arrived early and stayed late using my inherited access to dig deeper into the corruption I'd only glimpsed. The warehouse workers were my first allies, though they didn't know it. Tony Ramirez, a 15-year veteran, pulled me aside during a coffee break. "You seem different from the other office people," he said, studying my face carefully. "Most of them act like we don't exist." "You guys do the real work," I replied honestly. "I'm just moving papers around." Tony laughed bitterly. "Papers that get people killed sometimes. You know, we've been reporting safety violations for 2 years, broken loading equipment, electrical problems, chemical storage issues. Marcus won't approve the repair costs because it would hurt his profit margins." Miguel Santos, Tony's longtime partner, joined our conversation. "3 guys got hurt last month when that forklift battery exploded. Company called it operator error so they wouldn't have to pay workers' comp." I started documenting everything they told me, building a comprehensive file of OSHA violations and worker safety issues that Marcus was deliberately ignoring. But the deeper I dug, the worse it got. Sandra began confiding in me as her stress levels increased. "He's demanding I change the pension fund allocations," she whispered one afternoon when Marcus was out of the office. "Moving money from employee retirement accounts into operational expenses. It's not legal, June. If the Department of Labor audits us, people could go to prison." "Have you talked to anyone about this?" I asked carefully. "Who am I supposed to tell HR reports directly to Marcus? The board only hears what he wants them to hear." Her voice cracked with frustration. "I have 2 kids in college. I can't lose this job, but I can't keep doing things that I know are wrong." That night, I accessed the pension fund records from my apartment. Sandra wasn't exaggerating. Marcus had systematically drained nearly $2 million from employee retirement accounts to cover operational losses and fund his lifestyle. The money had been transferred to shell companies, then moved to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. But my most disturbing discovery came from the customer database. Marcus wasn't just stealing from employees. He was selling confidential client information to our competitors. Manufacturing schedules, shipping routes, government contract details, everything was being packaged and sold to the highest bidders. I found encrypted files on a hidden server containing customer data from our military contracts, shipping manifests for weapons shipments, personnel transport schedules, classified facility locations. Marcus was essentially operating as a foreign intelligence asset, selling American national security information for profit. The next morning brought a new shock. I arrived at work to find Catherine Phillips, one of our board members, in Marcus's office at 7 a.m. Through the glass partition, I could see her handing him an envelope while he transferred money on his computer. Their body language suggested an intimate relationship that went far beyond professional. I'd found our board corruption. During lunch, I drove to a secure location and called Benjamin Crawford. I need to know about whistleblower protections and how to contact federal authorities without compromising the investigation. June. This sounds like it's moved beyond corporate fraud. If military contracts are involved, you're talking about potential national security violations. I need to connect you with someone at the FBI. That afternoon, Special Agent Sarah Chen called me on a secure line. Ms. Patterson, we've been investigating irregularities in defense contractor billing. Your information could be exactly what we need to build a case. Are you willing to cooperate? I want these people stopped, I said firmly, but I also want to protect the innocent employees who depend on this company. We'll need extensive documentation. Can you continue gathering evidence without exposing yourself? I own the company, I reminded her. They work for me, they just don't know it yet. Over the following weeks, I became a one-person intelligence operation. I installed tiny recording devices in the conference room, documented every illegal transaction, and photographed evidence of safety violations. Marcus's paranoia was growing, but he suspected external threats, not internal ones. The breakthrough came when I discovered his partnership with Chinese military contractors. Marcus was selling our logistics expertise to help foreign governments move sensitive materials through American ports. He was quite literally committing treason for money, but Marcus was getting desperate as financial pressures mounted. The company was running out of money to steal, and his expensive lifestyle was becoming harder to maintain. I could see him planning something big, something that would either solve his problems permanently or destroy the company entirely. Late one Friday evening, I intercepted a phone call that chilled me to the bone. Marcus was arranging to sell Meridian Logistics entirely to a foreign investment group using falsified financial statements to inflate the company's value. He planned to take the money and disappear, leaving our employees without jobs and our government clients without essential services. I had to move fast. The sale was scheduled to close within 2 weeks. That weekend, I met with Benjamin Crawford and Agent Chen at a secure federal facility. We laid out everything I discovered over 3 months of investigation. The evidence was overwhelming: embezzlement, fraud, safety violations, national security breaches, and now conspiracy to defraud international investors. We have enough to arrest him tomorrow, Agent Chen said, reviewing my files. But if you want to expose this publicly and protect the company's future, timing will be crucial. There's a board meeting scheduled for next Friday, I said. Marcus called it to discuss the sale proposal. That's when I'll reveal everything. Are you sure you want to do this yourself? Benjamin asked with concern. Once you step forward, there's no going back. These people will know you've been gathering evidence against them for months. I thought about Tony and Miguel risking their safety every day with broken equipment. I thought about Sandra being forced to steal from pension funds. I thought about my grandmother trusting me to be smarter than she was, to not let them see me coming. They've been underestimating me for months, I said. Time to show them who they're really working for. The week leading up to the board meeting, Marcus's behavior became increasingly erratic and dangerous. He seemed to sense that something was wrong, but his paranoia focused on external threats, rather than the quiet dispatcher in the corner who'd been documenting his crimes. Monday morning brought a humiliating public spectacle that tested every ounce of my self-control. Marcus had arranged a presentation for potential Japanese investors, showcasing Meridian's capabilities to secure a lucrative shipping contract. As the delegation toured our facilities, I was assigned to coordinate schedules and take notes.
"Where's my coffee?"
Marcus demanded in front of the visiting executives, snapping his fingers at me like I was a servant. These investors didn't fly halfway around the world to wait for refreshments. "I'll get it right now, Mr. Wellington," I replied professionally, biting back what I really wanted to say. "Faster, and make sure you don't embarrass us with your usual incompetence. These people expect professionalism, not whatever this is." He gestured dismissively at my business attire with obvious disgust. The Japanese executives looked uncomfortable with his treatment of me, exchanging glances that suggested this behavior reflected poorly on the company. But Marcus was too focused on his performance to notice. During the presentation, he repeatedly interrupted my translations to correct information that was actually accurate, making himself look foolish while undermining my competence. When I tried to clarify a shipping timeline, he cut me off sharply. "Nobody asked for your opinion, dispatcher. Just sit there and write down what the adults are saying." The lead investor, Mr. Tanaka, asked me directly about port security protocols, recognizing that I clearly understood the logistics better than Marcus did. Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in. "She wouldn't know anything about that. She just shuffles paperwork. Let me explain how real operations work." His explanation contained several factual errors that could have cost us the contract, but I had to remain silent and watch him potentially destroy a legitimate business opportunity through his ego and incompetence. That afternoon, I discovered something that made my blood boil. While accessing employee records to verify pension fund thefts, I found a disturbing pattern of discrimination. Marcus had been systematically targeting older employees for termination, replacing experienced workers with younger, cheaper alternatives regardless of performance. Janet Morrison, a 58-year-old logistics coordinator with 30 years of experience, was next on his list. Her personnel file contained fabricated performance complaints and edited security footage designed to create grounds for dismissal. She had no idea that her job was in jeopardy, but Marcus was building a case to fire her without severance pay. Janet had trained half the people in the company. She knew our systems better than anyone and had mentored dozens of employees throughout her career. Marcus's plan to destroy her was both illegal age discrimination and a massive loss of institutional knowledge. I began documenting this pattern, finding 8 other veteran employees who'd been forced out through similar manufactured complaints. The age discrimination lawsuit alone would cost the company millions, but Marcus didn't care because he planned to be gone with his stolen money. Wednesday brought the discovery that nearly broke my cover. Sandra pulled me into the supply closet, tears streaming down her face as she clutched a manila folder. "He's making me fire Janet tomorrow," she whispered. "He wants me to present these fake performance reviews to HR and process her termination." June. "I've known Janet since I started here. She's been like a mother to me. I can't do this." "What happens if you refuse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "He'll fire me too, and then someone else will do it anyway. At least this way I can try to minimize the damage." Her hands shook as she opened the folder, showing me the fabricated evidence. "He's been planning this for weeks. Security camera footage edited to make her look negligent, fake customer complaints, even forged signatures on safety reports." I made my decision in that moment. "Sandra, what if I told you there was another way, that someone with authority over Marcus was planning to stop all of this?" She looked at me with desperate hope. "What are you talking about?" I can't explain everything right now, but Janet's job is safe. Just trust me until Friday. Can you delay the termination paperwork until then? June, I don't understand what you're saying, but I'll do anything to protect Janet. That evening, I called Agent Chen with an urgent update. We need to accelerate the timeline. He's escalating his attacks on innocent employees. If we wait much longer, more people are going to be hurt. We're ready when you are, she assured me. Just remember, once you reveal yourself, your safety becomes a concern. Marcus sounds increasingly unstable. Her warning proved prophetic the very next day. Thursday afternoon, Marcus discovered that someone had been accessing sensitive files during off hours. IT security had flagged unusual login activity, though they couldn't identify the source because I'd been using my inherited owner access codes. He called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room, his face flushed with rage as he addressed the entire staff. Someone in this room is stealing from this company. Someone here thinks they can access confidential information and get away with it. His eyes swept across the crowd like a predator searching for prey. I want everyone to know that I will find whoever is responsible. And when I do, they won't just be fired. I'll make sure they never work anywhere again. I'll destroy their reputation, their credit, their ability to support their families. The room was dead silent. Employees avoided eye contact, terrified of being singled out for suspicion. Marcus continued his tirade, becoming more threatening with each word. If the person responsible comes forward now, maybe I'll go easy on them. But if I have to hunt them down, if I have to investigate each and every one of you, then everyone will suffer for their crimes. After the meeting, Marcus began systematically interrogating employees in his office. Sandra emerged from her session pale and shaking. Tony and Miguel were questioned about warehouse security. Even Janet was called in, though she had no access to the systems in question. Late that afternoon, as most employees had left for the day, Marcus cornered me in the storage room where I was organizing shipping manifests. The space was cramped and isolated with only one exit that he blocked with his body. You know, June, you're the one person I haven't talked to yet about our security breach, he said, his voice dangerously calm. His eyes had a wild look that made my skin crawl. I don't have access to anything sensitive, Mr. Wellington. I just handle basic dispatch communications. That's interesting because IT tells me the unauthorized access happened during hours when you've been working late. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. What exactly have you been doing here after hours? Filing shipping reports and updating delivery schedules. You can check with Sandra about my assignments. He grabbed my arm suddenly, his fingers digging into my skin hard enough to leave bruises. Don't lie to me. I know someone is trying to destroy this company, and I'm going to find out who. Mr. Wellington, you're hurting me. Please let go. Instead, he tightened his grip and pressed me against the metal shelving. You think you're clever, don't you? Quiet little dispatcher who nobody notices. But I see everything that happens in my company. My hidden recording device was capturing every word, every threat, every second of this assault. I forced myself to remain calm while documenting his crimes one final time. I don't know what you think I've done, but you need to let me go right now. I need to search your personal belongings, your purse, your car, your computer. If you're innocent, you won't mind proving it. That's not legal without cause. I'm calling security. He laughed harshly. I am security. I own everyone in this building. Your job, your future, your ability to pay rent next month, all of that belongs to me. I looked directly into his eyes and made a choice that would change everything. Actually, Mr. Wellington, you're wrong about that. You don't own anything here, but you'll find that out very soon. Something in my tone made him release my arm and step back slightly. For just a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. What did you just say? You heard me correctly, and tomorrow's board meeting is going to be very educational for everyone involved. I walked past him toward the exit, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Oh, and this entire conversation was recorded, so now we can add assault and intimidation to the list of charges. His face went white as I left him standing alone in the storage room, finally beginning to realize that the quiet dispatcher might be far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. That evening, I drove straight to Benjamin Crawford's law office, my arm still bearing bruises from Marcus's assault. The recording device had captured everything perfectly: his threats, his admission of surveillance, and his physical attack. But more importantly, it had recorded my response, establishing clearly that I knew more about the company's ownership than any dispatcher should. "June, this changes everything," Benjamin said after reviewing the audio. "He's escalated to physical violence. We need to involve law enforcement immediately." "Agent Chen is already coordinating with local police," I assured him, "but I want to handle the board meeting first. Once Marcus is arrested, the other conspirators might scatter or destroy evidence. If I confront them all together, we can get confessions and expose the entire network." Benjamin pulled up the corporate bylaws on his computer. "As majority shareholder, you have absolute authority to call special board meetings, remove officers, and appoint new management. But are you sure you want to walk into a room full of criminals and announce that you've been investigating them? They've underestimated me for months. Tomorrow they'll learn the cost of that mistake." I spent the night organizing my evidence into a comprehensive presentation. Financial records showing embezzlement safety violation reports that Marcus had suppressed recordings of his illegal orders to Sandra, photographs of the hidden server containing stolen customer data, and documentation of his conspiracy with Catherine Phillips and foreign contractors. But my most damaging discovery came in the early hours of Friday morning. While preparing my final evidence review, I found a series of encrypted emails between Marcus and a Chinese logistics company that revealed the true scope of his treason. He hadn't just been selling customer information. He'd been deliberately overcharging American military contracts and sending the excess payments to foreign accounts. Our government was unknowingly funding enemy intelligence operations through Marcus's inflated billing schemes. The Pentagon was paying Meridian Logistics 50% above market rates for transport services, believing they were supporting a patriotic American company. Instead, Marcus was skimming the overcharges and transferring millions of dollars to accounts controlled by Chinese military contractors. This wasn't just corporate fraud anymore. This was active economic warfare against the United States, and Marcus was a willing collaborator. I called Agent Chen at 6 a.m. with the new evidence. "We need to coordinate the arrest timing perfectly. If he realizes what's happening during the board meeting, he might try to flee the country." "Federal agents will be positioned outside the building," she confirmed. "The moment you give us the signal, we'll move in." "Are you sure you don't want protection during the meeting itself? If they see federal agents, they'll know it's over and might become violent. I need them to believe they still have control until the very last moment." At 7 a.m., I drove to the office for what I knew would be my final day as the invisible dispatcher. Sandra was already at her desk, looking exhausted and worried about Janet's scheduled termination. "Did you delay the paperwork like I asked?" I whispered. "Yes, but Marcus is getting suspicious. He wants to handle the termination personally this afternoon." "Sandra, I need you to trust me completely today. Whatever happens in that board meeting, whatever you hear or see, just remember that everything is going to be okay. Can you do that?" She nodded uncertainly, but I could see the hope in her eyes. Tony and Miguel were unloading a shipment when I found them in the warehouse. "Guys, I need to ask you both a favor. If anyone asks you about safety violations or working conditions, I want you to tell the absolute truth. Don't worry about protecting your jobs or getting in trouble. Just be honest about everything you've experienced here." "June, what's going on?" Tony asked. "You've been acting strange lately, asking a lot of questions about company policies and management. I can't explain everything right now, but I promise you both that things are about to get much better around here." At 9 a.m., board members began arriving for the special meeting that Marcus had called to approve the fake company sale. Catherine Phillips looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and avoiding eye contact with other directors. Derek Morrison seemed confident, probably expecting to negotiate a promotion in the new ownership structure. The other board members appeared genuinely confused about the meeting's purpose. Dr. Robert Hayes, retired military officer who'd joined the board for his logistics expertise, looked concerned about the hastily scheduled session. Maria Santos, representing employee interests, seemed worried about potential job losses from a company sale. I positioned myself in the small dispatcher area adjacent to the boardroom, where I could observe through the glass partition while remaining invisible to the participants. My evidence files were prepared, my recording devices were active, and Agent Chen was standing by outside. At 9:30, Marcus entered the boardroom looking haggard and paranoid. His eyes darted around the room constantly, and I noticed his hands shaking slightly as he arranged his presentation materials. The assault yesterday had clearly rattled him, though he didn't understand why.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for accommodating this emergency meeting.
He began, his voice artificially confident. I've received an outstanding offer to purchase Meridian Logistics that will provide significant returns for all shareholders. Dr. Hayes interrupted immediately.
Marcus, why wasn't this opportunity discussed in our regular quarterly meeting? Major decisions like this require proper deliberation.
Market conditions change rapidly, Robert. Sometimes we have to move quickly to capitalize on opportunities. Catherine Phillips nodded eagerly, obviously trying to appear supportive while knowing the sale was fraudulent.
I think Marcus is right. We should consider all options that maximize shareholder value.
But Maria Santos looked skeptical. What about employee protections? Will the new owners honor existing contracts and benefits? Marcus waved dismissively.
Those details will be worked out during the transition. Our primary obligation is to shareholders, not employees.
I watched Dr. Hayes' face darken at that statement.
As a military veteran, he clearly believed in taking care of the people under your command. Marcus, I'd like to review the financial projections that justify this sale price,
Dr. Hayes said firmly.
These numbers seem inflated compared to our recent performance reports. Robert, you're not an accountant. Leave the financial analysis to people who understand these things. That condescending response was Marcus's first major mistake.
Dr. Hayes had run logistics operations for the entire European theater during his military career. He understood financial analysis better than Marcus ever would.
I'm requesting a complete audit of all financial records before any sale proceeds, Dr. Hayes announced. Something doesn't feel right about this entire situation.
Marcus's face flushed red.
You don't have the authority to demand audits. I'm the CEO of this company, and I'm recommending this sale for very good reasons. Actually, Robert has every right to request an audit, Maria Santos added. Board members have fiduciary responsibility to examine all major decisions thoroughly.
I could see Marcus's desperation growing as his fake sale faced legitimate scrutiny.
Catherine Phillips looked ready to panic, probably realizing that an audit would expose their conspiracy. Look, we can argue about procedures later,
Marcus said, his voice rising.
But this offer expires at close of business today. We need to make a decision now.
That was my cue. I stood up from my desk, gathered my evidence files, and walked toward the boardroom door. Through the glass, I could see Marcus's eyes widen in shock as he realized the quiet dispatcher was approaching the sacred space where important people made important decisions. I opened the door and stepped inside, my heart pounding but my voice completely steady.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think there are some things this board needs to know before making any decisions about selling my company.
The room fell silent. Every eye was on me as I walked to the podium and set down my files. Marcus's face had gone completely white.
"Sit down!"
he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation.
"Security! Get this woman out of here!"
But I was already tapping the microphone, and my words carried clearly through the suddenly quiet room.
I'd like to call a board meeting to remove the CEO who thinks the majority shareholder is his coffee girl.
The boardroom erupted in confused voices as I stood calmly at the podium, watching Marcus's world crumble in real time.
Dr. Hayes leaned forward with intense interest, Maria Santos looked stunned, and Catherine Phillips appeared ready to faint.
"What is she talking about?"
Derek Morrison demanded, looking between Marcus and me with growing alarm.
"Marcus, who is this woman? She's nobody!"
Marcus shouted, but his voice betrayed his panic.
"She's just a temp dispatcher who's obviously having some kind of mental breakdown."
I opened my first evidence folder and pulled out the official ownership documents. My name is June Patterson, not June Riley. I inherited 51% of Meridian Logistics from my grandmother Patricia Patterson through Riverside Holdings, LLC. Benjamin Crawford entered the room on cue, carrying additional legal files and wearing the confident expression of an attorney who'd prepared thoroughly for this moment.
"Benjamin Crawford representing Ms. Patterson and Riverside Holdings," he announced professionally.
"I have certified copies of all inheritance documents, stock certificates, and corporate filings establishing my client's majority ownership of this company."
Dr. Hayes stood up immediately. "May I examine those documents?"
"Of course," I replied, handing him the folder. "You'll find everything is properly notarized and legally verified." While Dr. Hayes reviewed the paperwork, I turned to face Marcus directly.
"For the past 3 months, I've been working undercover in my own company documenting systematic fraud, embezzlement, safety violations, and several federal crimes." "This is ridiculous," Marcus sputtered. "Even if she inherited some stock, she can't just walk in here and make accusations." "Actually, she can," Dr. Hayes said grimly, studying the ownership certificates. "These documents appear legitimate. Ms. Patterson owns controlling interest in this company, which means she has authority to call board meetings, remove officers, and access all corporate records."
Catherine Phillips finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, is this true?" I answered before he could respond.
"It's absolutely true, Ms. Phillips. Just like it's true that you've been accepting bribes to vote for Marcus's proposals, including this fraudulent sale he's trying to push through today."
The color drained from Catherine's face as I opened my second evidence folder. "These are photographs of you accepting cash payments from Marcus in exchange for your board votes. These are banking records showing deposits to your personal account that correspond exactly to major corporate decisions. And this is a recording of you discussing how to split the profits from today's fake sale." I pressed play on a digital recorder, and Catherine's voice filled the room, clearly discussing her conspiracy with Marcus to defraud the other shareholders.
"The sale price is completely inflated,"
her recorded voice explained. "The buyers know they're overpaying, but Marcus promised them access to our military contracts. We split the excess payment 3 ways. Marcus gets 60%, I get 30%, and the Chinese contacts get 10% for their cooperation." The room exploded in shocked voices. Maria Santos stood up angrily.
"Catherine, you've been selling military information to foreign contractors."
I can explain," Catherine stammered, but her guilt was obvious to everyone present. Derek Morrison pointed at Marcus accusingly.
"You told me this sale would save the company. You said we were struggling financially." "We are struggling," Marcus shouted back, "because this company is being sabotaged by industrial spies and disloyal employees."
I opened my third evidence folder containing the financial records that told the real story. The company isn't struggling because of sabotage, Mr. Wellington. It's struggling because you've stolen over $2 million from employee pension funds, embezzled operational capital through shell companies, and systematically overcharged our military contracts while sending the excess payments to foreign accounts. Dr. Hayes examined the financial documents with the trained eye of someone who'd managed massive logistics budgets. "These records show deliberate fraud, not operational losses. Marcus, you've been stealing from your own company and our government contracts."
"This is all fabricated,"
Marcus desperately protested.
"She's obviously working with our competitors to destroy us."
I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the boardroom projector. "Let me show everyone the hidden server that Mr. Wellington established to store stolen customer information." The screen displayed file directories containing confidential data from dozens of clients, including classified military shipping schedules and personnel transport information. These files were being sold to Chinese logistics companies. I continued clicking through folders that showed the scope of Marcus's espionage operation. Our government was paying premium rates for secure transport services, while unknowingly funding intelligence operations against American interests. Maria Santos covered her mouth in horror. "Marcus, you've been committing treason!" "Now I understand why you've been so paranoid lately," Dr. Hayes said coldly. "You knew someone was investigating your crimes." I pressed play on another recording, this one capturing Marcus's physical assault from the previous day. His voice echoed through the boardroom speakers, threatening my job, my future, and my ability to pay rent. "Yesterday, Mr. Wellington cornered me in the storage room and physically assaulted me while threatening to destroy my life if I continued investigating his activities," I announced. He had no idea that the nobody dispatcher he was attacking actually owned his company. Marcus's face cycled through emotions, shock, rage, desperation, and finally a kind of defeated panic as he realized the scope of his exposure. Derek Morrison stood up abruptly. "I want everyone to know that I had no knowledge of any illegal activities. If I'd known about fraud or national security violations, I would have reported them immediately." "Actually, Derek, you did know," I said, opening yet another evidence folder. "These are security camera recordings of you accessing the building at midnight to destroy financial records. You've been helping Marcus cover up his crimes for months." The recording showed Derek clearly photographing documents in Marcus's office, then feeding papers into an industrial shredder. His participation in the conspiracy was undeniable. Benjamin Crawford stepped forward with additional documents. "Ms. Patterson has been cooperating with federal investigators for several weeks. FBI agents are currently positioned outside this building ready to execute arrest warrants for multiple federal crimes." Catherine Phillips jumped up from her chair. "I want to cooperate. I'll testify against Marcus in exchange for immunity." "Sit down, Catherine," Marcus roared. "Nobody's getting arrested. This is all some kind of elaborate corporate raid." Dr. Hayes looked at him with disgust. "Marcus, you've betrayed everything this company stands for. Our contracts support American military operations, and you've been selling that information to foreign governments." I walked to the boardroom windows and gave a prearranged signal to the parking lot below. Within seconds, FBI agents in tactical gear were entering the building. "Federal agents are now securing the premises," I announced calmly. "Mr. Wellington, Ms. Phillips, and Mr. Morrison will be arrested for conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, and violations of the Espionage Act." Marcus made one final, desperate attempt to escape, rushing toward the boardroom door, but Agent Chen was already standing in the hallway with handcuffs ready. "Marcus Wellington, you're under arrest for conspiracy to defraud the United States government, violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and providing material support to foreign intelligence operations." As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Marcus looked back at me with pure hatred. "You planned this whole thing. You've been setting me up from the beginning." "No, Marcus," I replied quietly. "You set yourself up. I just documented the crimes you chose to commit." Catherine Phillips was crying as agents led her away, begging for mercy and promising to cooperate fully with the investigation. Derek Morrison maintained his innocence, even as overwhelming evidence of his participation was being presented to federal prosecutors. Dr. Hayes, and Maria Santos sat in stunned silence as the boardroom emptied of criminals. Finally, Dr. Hayes spoke. "Ms. Patterson, this company owes you a tremendous debt. How long have you suspected these activities?" My grandmother warned me that something was wrong with the current management. She trusted me to investigate thoroughly before taking control of the company. I gathered my evidence files as federal agents photographed everything for their case. Now we need to focus on protecting our employees and rebuilding the trust we've lost with our legitimate clients. Agent Chen approached me as her team finished securing evidence. Ms. Patterson, your cooperation has helped us dismantle a significant intelligence operation. The information Marcus was selling could have compromised military operations and endangered American personnel overseas. What happens to the company now? Maria Santos asked with concern. I looked around the boardroom that had hosted so much corruption and made a decision that would honor my grandmother's legacy. We're going to clean house completely. Every stolen dollar will be returned to employee pension funds with interest. Every safety violation will be corrected immediately, and every employee who was threatened or intimidated will receive compensation for what they've endured. Benjamin Crawford smiled proudly. Your grandmother would be very pleased with how you handled this situation. As federal agents finished their work and the last of the conspirators was led away, I stood at the boardroom windows looking down at the employees who were beginning to gather in the parking lot. Sandra, Tony, Miguel, and Janet were talking nervously, unsure what the presence of FBI agents meant for their jobs. It was time to address my real board of directors, the people who actually made this company work. 2 hours later, I stood before the assembled employees in our main warehouse, my heart heavy with the responsibility of rebuilding their trust and securing their futures. Word had spread quickly about the arrests, and worried faces looked back at me as I prepared to address their concerns. My name is June Patterson. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the space where Tony and Miguel had worked for years with broken equipment. For the past 3 months, I've been working among you as a dispatcher, but my real purpose was investigating the criminal activity that's been destroying this company. Sandra raised her hand tentatively. June, are we all going to lose our jobs, with Marcus arrested and federal agents everywhere? What happens to the company? Nobody is losing their job, I assured her firmly. In fact, I have some announcements that I think will surprise you. I gestured to Benjamin Crawford, who was carrying a folder of legal documents that would transform the lives of everyone present. First, I want you to know that every penny stolen from your pension funds has been recovered with interest. The FBI seized Marcus's offshore accounts, and those funds are being returned immediately to your retirement accounts. A murmur of relief swept through the crowd. Janet Morrison wiped tears from her eyes as she realized her retirement security was restored. The unsafe working conditions that many of you have been reporting for years will be corrected starting Monday morning. I've already contracted with equipment suppliers to replace every piece of broken machinery in this facility. Tony stepped forward, his voice filled with emotion. June, you mean we're actually going to get proper safety equipment, working forklifts, proper electrical systems, safe chemical storage. Not just proper equipment, Tony. I'm promoting you to safety compliance supervisor with full authority to shut down any operation that doesn't meet OSHA standards. Your first assignment is working with federal inspectors to implement comprehensive safety protocols. Miguel looked shocked. What about management retaliation for reporting problems? There won't be any retaliation because the people who threatened you are in federal custody, I explained. Miguel, I'm offering you the position of warehouse operations manager with full authority to hire additional staff and implement the safety improvements our people deserve. Sandra raised her hand again. June, I need to ask about the pension fund manipulation Marcus forced me to participate in. Am I going to face criminal charges? Sandra, you were coerced into illegal activities under threat of termination. Agent Chen has confirmed that you'll be treated as a cooperating witness, not a co-conspirator. More importantly, I'm promoting you to Chief Financial Officer with a mandate to implement transparent accounting practices and employee-friendly policies. The relief on Sandra's face was visible to everyone present. Janet Morrison spoke up, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. June, what about the age discrimination Marcus was planning to fire me and several other veteran employees? Janet, not only are you keeping your job, but I'm creating a new position specifically for you, employee advocate and training director. Your 30 years of experience will be used to mentor new employees and ensure that nobody ever faces discrimination or harassment in this workplace again. I pulled out another document that I'd been preparing since discovering the full scope of Marcus's crimes. I want everyone to understand something important about the future of this company. The corruption you've witnessed wasn't just stealing money. It was stealing dignity, safety, and respect from the people who make this company successful. Dr. Hayes, who had remained for the employee meeting, stepped forward to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that Ms. Patterson's investigation potentially saved lives. The military contract information that Marcus was selling could have compromised transport operations and endangered service members overseas. Your new owner is a true patriot who put herself at risk to protect our national security. A voice from the back of the crowd called out, "What happens to the company long term? Are you planning to sell it?" "I'm not selling anything," I announced firmly, "but I am restructuring ownership to better reflect the people who actually create value here. Starting next quarter, every full-time employee will participate in a profit-sharing program based on company performance. When we succeed, you succeed." The crowd erupted in surprised conversations as people processed this unexpected development. Additionally, I continued, "I'm establishing an employee council with real authority over workplace policies, safety standards, and benefit programs. You'll have a voice in every decision that affects your working conditions." Agent Chen approached the group with an update on the federal investigation. "I want to assure everyone that the criminal activities we uncovered were limited to senior management," she announced. "Our investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing by any employee who was coerced or threatened into compliance. You were victims, not criminals." She turned to address me directly. "Ms. Patterson, I also want to inform you that the recovered assets exceed our initial estimates. Marcus had been systematically overcharging government contracts for years, accumulating nearly $5 million in fraudulent profits." "What happens to that money?" Sandra asked. "It goes back to the taxpayers he stole it from," I replied. "But the government has agreed to continue our contracts at fair market rates, which will actually improve our profit margins compared to Marcus's unsustainable pricing schemes." Benjamin Crawford stepped forward with final legal updates. "The board of directors has been reconstituted with new members who represent employee interests and operational expertise," he announced. "Dr. Hayes will continue, as Chairman Maria Santos will represent employee concerns, and we're adding 2 additional seats to be filled by elected employee representatives." Tony raised his hand. "June, this all sounds amazing, but why are you doing this? You could have just fired everyone and started over with new people." I thought about my grandmother's final words about being smarter than she was and not letting them see me coming. "Because you're the people who actually make this company work," I said simply. Marcus thought power came from fear and intimidation. But real power comes from building something together, protecting each other, and creating value for the community we serve. Maria Santos smiled for the first time since the arrests. "This is exactly what your grandmother would have wanted. She always believed that companies should serve their employees and communities, not just extract profits." As the meeting concluded and employees began discussing their new opportunities, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The investigation was complete, the criminals were in custody, and the company was positioned for a brighter future. But there was one more surprise waiting for me. Benjamin Crawford approached with a personal envelope that had been delivered during the meeting. "This arrived by courier from Agent Chen's supervisor," he said with a mysterious smile. Inside was a letter from the Department of Defense, recognizing my cooperation in exposing a significant national security threat. But more importantly, it contained an invitation to participate in a program helping other companies identify and prevent similar intelligence compromises. "They want me to help investigate other defense contractors," I asked in surprise. "Your experience combining business ownership with undercover investigation is apparently unique, Benjamin explained. They think you could help protect other companies from similar infiltration. I looked around the warehouse where my employees were talking excitedly about their new opportunities, their restored pension funds, and their upgraded safety equipment. The transformation from fear to hope was visible on every face. Maybe someday, I said. But right now, I have a company to rebuild and people to take care of. As we prepared to leave, Sandra approached with tears in her eyes. June, I don't know how to thank you for saving my career and protecting my family. You don't need to thank me, Sandra. You protected this company's integrity under impossible circumstances. You're exactly the kind of person who should be making financial decisions here. Tony and Miguel joined us, still processing their promotions from warehouse workers to management positions. We've never had a boss who actually cared about worker safety, Miguel said with amazement. This feels too good to be true. It's not too good to be true, I assured him. It's just what a workplace should be when it's run by people who understand that success means taking care of each other. As we walked toward the parking lot, I saw Marcus being loaded into a federal transport vehicle for his initial court appearance. He looked back at the building he'd ruled through fear and corruption, perhaps finally understanding that his empire had been built on lies. Justice was being served, but more importantly, a community was being healed. 6 months later, I stood in the same boardroom where I'd exposed Marcus's crimes, but everything had changed. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been cleaned and updated, illuminating faces that reflected hope rather than fear. The monthly employee council meeting was about to begin, and I couldn't help but smile at how far we'd all come. Sandra entered carrying financial reports that told a story of remarkable transformation. As chief financial officer, she'd implemented transparent accounting practices that had restored trust with clients and regulators alike. Our third quarter profits are up 47% compared to last year, she announced proudly. And for the first time in company history, every employee will receive a substantial profit-sharing bonus. Tony and Miguel followed her in wearing the confident expressions of managers who knew their workers' safety was the company's top priority. Under their leadership, Meridian had achieved a perfect safety record while actually increasing productivity through improved equipment and training. We've completed installation of the new warehouse automation systems, Tony reported. Our injury rates are down to 0 and worker satisfaction surveys show 96% approval ratings. More importantly, Miguel added, we've been contacted by other logistics companies who want to implement our safety protocols. We're becoming an industry model for worker protection. Janet Morrison entered with her usual warm smile, but now she carried herself with the authority of someone whose experience was valued and respected. As employee advocate and training director, she'd created programs that other companies were studying and copying. Our mentorship program has placed 47 employees in advancement opportunities, Janet announced, including 8 people who've earned promotions to supervisory positions and 12 who've completed professional development certifications. Dr. Hayes took his seat as chairman, bringing the military precision and ethical standards that had made him such an effective leader. Under his guidance, the board had become a model of corporate governance focused on stakeholder value rather than pure profit extraction. I want to update everyone on the legal proceedings, he began. Marcus Wellington was sentenced yesterday to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and espionage. Catherine Phillips received 8 years for her role in the bribery scheme. Derek Morrison received 6 years for evidence tampering and conspiracy. The sentences felt appropriate, but I found myself thinking more about the positive changes than the punishments for past crimes. Agent Chen had visited the previous month with updates on the broader investigation that our case had triggered. Marcus's intelligence network had extended to 6 other defense contractors, and their exposure had prevented potential security breaches that could have endangered military operations worldwide. The information you provided helped us identify and neutralize a systematic compromise of American logistics capabilities, she'd explained. Your courage to investigate and expose these crimes literally saved lives. But the recognition I valued most came from the employees whose lives had been transformed by the changes we'd implemented together. Benjamin Crawford entered the boardroom carrying legal documents that would formalize the next phase of our company's evolution. We'd spent months developing an employee ownership program that would gradually transfer additional equity stakes to the people who created value through their daily work. "The paperwork is complete for the expanded employee stock ownership plan," he announced. "Over the next 5 years, employees will earn equity shares based on performance safety contributions and company tenure." Sandra looked amazed as she reviewed the documents. "This means we'll actually own pieces of the company we're helping to build." "That's exactly what it means," I confirmed. My grandmother believed that companies should serve their communities, not just extract wealth from them. This ownership program ensures that everyone benefits when the company succeeds. The transformation had extended beyond our own operations. Word of our ethical turnaround had spread throughout the industry, attracting new clients who wanted to work with a company they could trust. Our revenue had grown substantially, but more importantly, our reputation had been rebuilt on a foundation of integrity and worker respect. Maria Santos had become our most effective board member, bringing employee perspectives to every major decision. Under her influence, we'd implemented family-friendly policies, comprehensive healthcare benefits, and educational support programs that other companies were beginning to adopt. "I want to share some feedback from our client satisfaction surveys," Maria announced. "Our military contracts have been renewed with commendation letters praising our security improvements and operational reliability. Our civilian clients report 94% satisfaction with our services, up from 68% under the previous management." The success wasn't just financial. We'd created a workplace culture where people felt valued, respected, and safe. Turnover had dropped to nearly zero, productivity had increased dramatically, and employee satisfaction surveys consistently showed results that made us proud. But perhaps the most meaningful change was personal. 6 months ago, I'd been a grieving granddaughter trying to understand a mysterious inheritance. Today, I was a confident leader who'd learned that real power comes from lifting others up rather than tearing them down. As the meeting concluded, Benjamin approached with a personal matter that made my heart race. "June, I have something to ask you," he said, his professional demeanor giving way to nervous excitement. "Watching you transform this company and protect these people has shown me what real leadership and integrity look like." He pulled out a small jewelry box that made several employees gasp with delight. "I've admired your courage, your compassion, and your commitment to doing what's right, even when it's difficult. Will you marry me?" The boardroom erupted in cheers as I looked at the man who'd supported me through the most challenging period of my life. Benjamin had been my legal advisor, my strategic partner, and my closest confidant throughout the investigation and transformation. "Yes," I said simply, and the celebration that followed felt like the perfect conclusion to our journey from corruption to renewal. 6 months after that, on our wedding day, Sandra served as my maid of honor. Tony and Miguel walked me down the aisle. Janet officiated the ceremony, and Dr. Hayes gave a toast about the power of truth and integrity to transform communities. Marcus Wellington was a distant memory, serving his federal sentence and occasionally appearing in news stories about corporate fraud. But his legacy was ultimately positive. His crimes had forced us to rebuild something better, stronger, and more ethical than what we'd inherited. The real legacy belonged to my grandmother, Patricia, whose wisdom and patience had made everything possible. She'd trusted me to be smarter than she was, to not let them see me coming, and to use power responsibly when I finally revealed myself. Standing in the boardroom where it all began, surrounded by people whose lives had been transformed by our shared commitment to justice and integrity, I finally understood what she'd really given me. Not just ownership of a company, but the opportunity to prove that business could be a force for good in the world. Today, Meridian Logistics stands as proof that companies can be profitable while treating workers with dignity, that leadership means service rather than domination, and that sometimes the quiet person in the corner is exactly who you need to solve your biggest problems. The dispatcher they mocked became the leader they needed. The woman they underestimated became the force that saved them all. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where people underestimated your capabilities based on your position or appearance? How did you prove them wrong, and what did the experience teach you about leadership and standing up for what's right? I'd love to hear your stories about times when quiet determination led to meaningful change in your workplace or community. Thank you for joining me on this journey from deception to justice. If this story inspired you to think differently about workplace courage and the power of doing what's right, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who found extraordinary strength when faced with impossible choices. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice matters no matter what their title says. Until next time, remember that real power comes from lifting others up, and sometimes the person who seems powerless holds all the cards they need to change everything.